everybody, welcome back to Tavern Talks 2.0. I am joined today by my good friend Alex. What's going on, Alex?
What's up? I'm just chilling.
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit in the last one about wanting to get to a particular topic, and we'll be reaching that today. If you haven't already read the title, I'm sure you can go take a peek there and see exactly what this is about. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Before we do that, make sure if you haven't already that you like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you are notified when new videos come out. We got a lot of these coming out. We got a really exciting episode for you next week. Go take a peek at that. Not going to spoil it for you, but definitely keep an eye out for it because it's going to be a special Christmas themed episode. So keep an eye out for that one, as well as the fact that we've been doing game reviews. I got a new game coming out very soon. That should already be out by the time this episode drops. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be scrambling to make that because as of recording date today, it has not released, but it's only a few days away. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll see the tag pop up right here in the top right corner of your screen. Go take click on that, go watch that video if you haven't, and then come back here and watch this because we're interesting too and we're gonna have a good time. So, first thing I want to talk about is the fact that it has been really chilly here lately. Have you noticed that, Alex?
Oh yeah, I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely love it. Like I'll get up in the work, like to go to work in the morning, and it's just it's snippy. It's very snippy.
It really is. Just that I love. So I'm one of those people that 100% like I want extra blankets on my bed. You will not convince me that I'm just sleeping with a sheet. And living in Florida, that is often very difficult. You know, where you're just like it's like 85 degrees out, like 85 degrees at night and your room is just cooking and you're like, do I turn up the AC or do I just swelter? Like, you know, for anybody who lives here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what we're going through. So when you get like 2 solid weeks of just, you know, sub 80 degree temperatures, you got even lower than that. I think we've been touching into the 60s, like mid low 60s pretty regularly as I speak.
It was 34 yesterday.
It was 34 yesterday. It's 66 degrees right now. Yeah. Phenomenal. So nice to be able to break out the heavy parkas. You know, my mom and sister are the kind that get cold easily, and they're like, oh, I love the cold season. Time to get the thick coats.
Dude, I've been loving it. It's fantastic. I miss the mountains. I miss the snow. I miss happiness. Florida's great and all, but I miss the mountains. I miss them so much.
You know, I actually heard that there was a slim possibility that this season, I don't know specifically when, but because of the really cold temperatures we've been experiencing, that parts of the state could even receive some snow this year.
Oh, I'm going back to Jacksonville. Let's go.
Take me with you. Yeah, it's an interesting time. So that'll conclude our icebreaker. I want to get right into this because I know this guy's we've been talking about some weird stuff in chat before we got here. I'm not going to bring it up because he asked me not to, considering we'll be talking about it for the next hour and we can make a whole episode out of that. This guy is a fiend, but when it comes to DMing Woes is the title of this episode. I want to get right into it because I know we have a lot to talk about here. So first thing I want to talk about is our top pet peeves. And I have a list of things that I like have, you know, scheduled out, basically like ready to go. If you want, I can do that. Or if you have some stuff that you immediately want to talk about, hit me with it. I want to hear what you got to say.
You know what? This time I'm going to let you go first this time, just because I guarantee you, DM to DM, whatever you're about to say, chances are it's probably on my list too. So you go ahead and go first, and we'll see where this goes.
Very probably, because I'll be honest, I picked some really generic stuff, but I think these are things that honestly, like, if you have ever DM'd in your life, or scratch that, you've ever been part of a D&D party, and you've seen stuff unfold before you, because if you play enough, you're gonna see it inevitably. First thing here. And this one really grinds my gears, but you know what? I'm not going to put too much on Caitlin. That was an interesting campaign. Players, when they take too long to complete their turn. That one, yeah. I mean,
that is entirely mathematics' fault. That is 100% the fault of math and the way that math works. Okay, we blame that on the order of operations. Calculation should not exist. I'm sorry, don't care.
You mean calculus? In Caitlin's term, Yeah, you know, it was.
It was, yeah, there was too many numbers.
I was looking at their skill sheet. So to bring you back, this is during the campaign where Alex here was Shard / Asmodeus. His wife Caitlin is playing along with us, and she ends up coming in with, was she a sword mage? Like what was her? She was a sword mage. Okay, but the way that she built it, excuse me, I think it was the way that Alex built it, right?
My bad.
Yeah,
my bad.
The way Alex built it, he didn't even realize this, but he basically stacked all of her bonuses in such a way that every time she used a certain ability, and I think it was just like basically a smite, to put it into like really, you know, quick terms, she basically, every time she did this smite, it would stack these bonuses and damage multipliers on top of it. I'm looking over at their character sheet. We're like 15 minutes into her turn, and they've got like a whole sheet of like differential equations. I don't know what they were doing, but it was the most complicated nonsense I've ever seen. And as soon as I saw that, I'm immediately like sitting here rubbing my head thinking, oh, it was a mistake to approve this character.
What makes it all worse, right, is like I think we're in the middle of a boss fight, right? And we sat down, like you and I think it was you and me really sat down looking at her character sheet, because you were I think you were a little upset that she was doing so much damage, which fair. But we sat down and you're like, but what about this? And my forehead hit the table so quick, because we were only doing like half of the damage she should have been doing.
Yep. There was a multiplier. Yeah.
Lost it. We missed a multiplier. And I'm looking at it and I gave up. Like at that point, I'm like, I thought I had all the math right this time. I'm like, okay, there's no way she should be doing any more damage than this. This is way too much. And you pointed that out to me. I'm like, but why does this exist? Why did we do this?
And you know what? Not only that, but I'm pretty sure that there were at least 2 or 3 encounters where she would have instantly killed whatever boss was in front of her, which was, by the way, and this is just the way I do D&D. When we inevitably do D&D on the channel, again, and I DM, you'll get to see this. I like to give my players a lot of bonuses and stuff and put really tough enemies in front of them. So it's really like, you know, here's this really OP character, you know, we built it to basically be broken. Now let's see how you handle some really tough foes. But in this case, let's say they're like level 10, right? I think that was one of the levels we had stopped at, was like 10 or 11. And then I put a level 18, 19 in front of them. Caitlin could have one-shot it. And in some cases she did. There were multiple cases. How many Tarrasques were you guys fighting at the end?
I think 2.
You're fighting
like 2 at a time, something like that.
You're fighting 2. I'm pretty sure she one-shot both of them.
No. Well, yes, actually, no, yeah, because that was during the whole circus thing, right? Is that what you're referring to? The whole big top thing that was going on?
No, that was an earlier level.
Or are you talking about like way at the end?
I'm talking at the end when you guys were up against multiple Tarrasques.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what I think was happening is like me and BBEG were like kind of duking it out, like in and out of existence for a little bit, right? So it was just the 2 of us, and then I think it was them against the 2 Tarrasques, and I think it was like Caitlin versus one, and I think it was Jonathan and Austin versus the other one, and they made it like a really sizable dent in one. Caitlin killed the one and then finished off the other one, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I do remember that, because Caitlin basically took one by herself, and then it was Austin and Jonathan were chipping away at this one, and they probably got, I'll give them credit for that one, they got a good like 40 or 50% of its health, and then Caitlin comes in and says, "Watch out, boys," and basically just beheads it. And then she had a great was it a great sword or a great axe?
Technically both, but I think it was a great is the one that she kept using.
The phrase technically both when it comes to that also frightens me, because I know like these are the kinds of ridiculous bonuses I probably shouldn't have allowed them to have, but I wanted them to have a good time. It was more cinematic than it was about, you know, the actual technicality. Okay, that is one thing.
I had a good time. I raised up a dragon. I had a good time.
Yes, you did. That is one thing I will say. It's not really a pet peeve, but just something I kind of want to like bring to the forefront. I'm more on the side when it comes to D&D about the role play aspect of it, and like, what do you want to do? Like, how do you want to engage what's in front of you? Alex, you can speak to this. I think I'm relatively fair when it comes to like, okay, let's set basic ground rules and stick to them, but then if something crazy happens, we can make adjustments as we go, but I really want you to kind of drive what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of cases, there have been instances where I've looked at the rule book and I'm like, that flat out doesn't make sense. Or rather, I'll change a rule because it's like, for what I'm trying to do within the story, it kind of makes it too difficult to do something or makes it way too easy to accomplish what we're trying to do. So we'll adjust rules from there. And I think any good DM should do that.
Yeah, there's a couple times where you wanted to make sure that, like, because you and I had to sit down and adjust Shardmodius, if you will, just because there were some combinations of like spells and abilities that would read a certain way, and we sat down and both of us looked at it like, that's just dumb. Yeah, that's just so broken. Why would anyone allow this? Right? So yeah, no, I think that's 100% fair, and honestly, I think more DMs should work with their players as opposed to working against their players. One of the things I guess if I could kind of get into one of my pet peeves.
Go for it.
Yeah, this is something I despise, like with a passion, right? And it's something I've just always hated about, not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons specifically, but more so just the role playing element. Mm-hmm. I am not a fan of the sometimes antagonistic relationship that players will have with their DMs.
Oh my gosh, like sometimes, talk about it.
And this, especially with like, and this, I've noticed a trend. Now that I'm thinking about it, that this is only something that happens with like very combat focused players. Like you know who I'm talking about, like the fighter mains, the barbarian mains, the ones who are constantly looking for a fight and just don't want to talk. They don't want to do diplomacy. They don't want to do the role playing aspect of their tabletop.
They're your murder hobos. They just walk in and kill everything.
Exactly. And like what I've noticed is like, it's like, if we're not role playing, how do I trigger the DM so much to the where he just kills me? Like there's almost always something where they will go out of their way to derail a campaign just for the sake of antagonizing the NPCs because they just want something to happen. And it's like, I mean, I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. I can understand if you're more so the combat, the combat oriented player. Hearing a bunch of NPCs yap to the same two other players sucks. I get it, especially when it's like 10, 15 minutes at a time. But if you want a good boss fight at the end, maybe you should go for the yap fest for a little bit.
Oh yeah. And that's, that's absolutely like, it kind of pairs like two things that I have listed here. One of them that's actually like my worst. So we'll get to that in a minute, but worst moments as a DM. That is definitely like what occurred in that. So, and like I said, we'll talk about that. But when it comes to the pet peeves, that goes hand in hand with another one I had written down, which is when players intentionally derail the party. And that's almost like there have been some times, and I'll specify what I mean by this, where you'll be playing, and truthfully, this is something I encounter as a player as well. I think that really frustrates me. When someone is saying like, maybe you got the party and they get a new quest, right? And they all want to go to this one specific quest. And, maybe it's to help Granny find her potatoes or something. I don't know. Like they just want to do the quest for one reason or another. And then you get that one other player who's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? And they're like, I'm going to go on this other quest. And I'm thinking, I was like, so now I have to, as a DM, split my attention between two groups of people doing multiple things when they could have just agreed as a party to go do the one thing and then gone and done the other one. But instead, you have to be the holdout and say, no, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do this other thing. And, that's extremely frustrating. I think, again, even as a player, where you're like, now the attention isn't on the immersion of it, because now you have to jump back and forth between two scenes. This isn't a Marvel movie, you know? The DM's only got so much attention.
Sometimes what I'll do, and this is something that I think Tom showed me, going back to, what we were talking about last episode with that amazing DM. That was actually a mistake that someone in our party made. I think it actually might have been me, because this is when I first started really playing D&D and stuff. And this might have actually been me that started it. Either I was the one that started it, or I went along with it. But essentially what the idea was if you're a player in that situation, a decent way to remedy that is, if you're going to split the party, or if someone at the table is going to split the party, try and even them out. Right. So like, let's say 4 people are staying doing the main thing, and then there's the one player that goes away, right? Have a second player go with that other party member, because even though the isolation is meant to be kind of like a natural consequence, almost like a punishment for splitting the party like that,
right?
Sometimes the other player can convince the one that tried to break up the party that what they're doing is dumb.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It sometimes it helps, even though it might seem counterintuitive at first. Sometimes it helps to kind of bring that player back, be the voice of reason, be the person that's like, hey, maybe, and I get that you want to do this thing, but there could be treasure, there could be this, there could be that, try and convince them to come back to the party, stuff like that.
Right. And honestly, like I understand what the thought process is there, and as a DM, if the players were absolutely dead set on the concept of I am going to split the party, I would probably require that. I'm not going to let someone go off completely by themselves. Otherwise, if they decide to go that route, like, it's going to be super boring for them. Because I'm not going to put any.
Die. One of the two.
Yeah, because either I'm going to throw something really ridiculous at them, or I'm not going to give them a good time. Not to throw shade or anything. That was our first time playing Call of Cthulhu when we did that. But when Miguel ended up going his own way, and he's like, I'm going to go explore this cave, and everyone else is running away. I'm like, okay, you climb into this cave, and you encounter a void of poison gas, and you die. It's like, there were signs everywhere. It said, don't go in here, and you went in and you died. And
yeah, I sat there, and I think you saw the look on my face when he was doing that. I'm just like, please don't do this. It's called Cthulhu. It's not a good time, Dad. Come on. Yeah,
he goes in and just decides, like, hey, this is a great idea, and then just dead. And I could tell he was a little sad about that, but I was like, listen, we're already at the end of the story. Like, it's coming to a close, and it was supposed to be like a lead on for another game. And I know this isn't D&D, but just kind of an idea. It's like a game master, dungeon master, whatever you want to call him, scenario. And as we're like wrapping up the story as the prequel for this other thing that's supposed to happen, he's going off and starting new things, and it's like, no. We're supposed to be like, we got dinner reservations in like an hour. Like, what? I gotta leave. I can't keep this up. So you walk into a cloud of poisonous gas and you die. Anyway.
I mean, it was to be fair. I don't remember if you mentioned this or not. It was a one shot. So
it was a one shot. Yes.
That's yeah. So that's for context sake, that is completely understandable if it's a one shot. Like you're not out here just killing characters for the sake of killing characters.
No.
Also, it's called Cthulhu, so
yes.
So it is completely excusable.
Absolutely. And I'm maybe controversial, maybe not. I don't know. I've talked with some DMs that. Most of them, I think, feel the same. I really don't like killing player characters. It's not a good feeling when you hand down a death sentence and be like, guess what? Your character's gone and there's nothing you can do about it.
I don't think most DMs enjoy that, to be honest. I think the only times that DMs actually enjoy doing that is more so like a feeling of comeuppance for players that kind of had it coming. like
The
you're, like
murder
I said,
hobo
like your
type.
antagonist. Yeah, your antagonistic players, or maybe not even antagonistic players in terms of like the way that they're actually playing the game, but maybe just the player themselves. Maybe you're at like a local card shop, right? Like a local game store, and one of the players that would actually join your party, because it is more of a public gaming session kind of thing if you're playing at like an LGS.
Right.
So sometimes you'll have players that want to join, and since you're playing at an LGS, sometimes it's like it's not meant to be a private thing. You're meant to have players kind of drop in, drop out, that kind of thing every now and then.
Yeah.
But like if it's like a player that comes in, it's kind of being like a creep, right? Like this is something I noticed, especially whenever you have like female players. I don't know if you've ever had this experience or not, but
Not personally, but I have heard stories.
yeah, like there've been times where I've been DMing, or I've been actually no, I can't even say that I've been part of a campaign because I was the DM.
Eternal DM
But
woes.
I hate it. But there've been times where like I'm sitting here and one of the players is straight up like you can tell that they made their character in a very specific way to flirt with the one female player at the table.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. It gets really weird and really awkward really quickly, especially when they don't understand that half the time their boyfriend, their fiance, their significant other, their spouse is right next to them,
Oh yeah.
and they just can't take a hint. It's awful. And as a DM, I get disgusted very, very easily when it comes to that stuff, right? Because I want to make sure that, especially when it comes to like female players, right? It's already not the most welcoming environment in the world, right? Because like let's call a spade here. Nerds are weird.
Yeah,
Nerds
they certainly can be.
kind of creepy, especially considering a lot of us in general just don't have like the best social skills in the world, so they don't understand that sometimes she's just being nice because she's a nice person. She's not into you like that, right? So like it's just, I want to make sure that we make the space as welcoming and inclusive as possible, especially for people like women who are not like necessarily, used to being in those kinds of environments.
Oh,
so
definitely.
To have the essentially what would have been their the cause of their apprehension for being in that kind of space in the first place, literally sit right next to them and do the exact most awful stereotypical thing that they could possibly do in that scenario, that's going to chase them off, and she's probably going to tell her friends about that, and that's not a good thing. It's not a good look for like us as players or as DMs. It's not a good look in general for the space,
Right.
So,
like you said, I mean,
Go ahead.
we're basically like I won't say ambassadors. I guess just more representatives is a good descriptor. You're a representative of your own culture when you're sharing it with somebody who's unfamiliar with it. So if you're going to come in and be really nasty or weird or mean, like you're going to leave a bad taste in that person's mouth, which is like what you said, you have to make that a welcoming environment to, new people, unless you straight up do not want that person to come back. Because I've known people who are like, I'll invite them, we'll do something along those lines, and then be like, what'd you think of it? And they're like, it's not really my cup of tea. And it was mainly because either, they really, and it's not for everybody. Some people genuinely do not like D&D. To each their own. But in a lot of cases, I think it's less about not liking D&D and more about not liking the environment. For example, when my sister played Call of Cthulhu, her only complaint, she said the role-playing was fun. The only thing she did not like was the seriousness of it. She said, I thought it was going to be, more silly and fun. And I said, yeah, Call of Cthulhu is really not that. It's sort of a very, I mean, it can be, but it's sort of as an introductory thing, us all kind of getting used to it. It was my first time DMing it. So, like it was a very serious environment. And I basically told her, like, listen, if you didn't like that, I get it. I think you'll really like D&D though, because if you're looking for just sort of
a lot more like welcoming to the more like the people who like the comedy types, the cutesy types,
exactly,
the happy endings, the rainbows, the sunshine, stuff like that. But it can be the exact opposite, which is also why I like D&D in general. It's very dynamic as a game. So yeah, no, you're 100% right now.
Definitely. And there's other game types. I really want to. We played it a few times on the channel. Going way back a ways, but I'd like to try Cogent again at some point. I ran a one shot most recently with it was Nick and Zach, and I think it was Zach's sister, and can't remember if Austin was able to make it, but Jason was there. Austin was not able to make it. I think he was sick. We actually ran a one-shot spy-themed Cogent at my place. Cool. It was really cool. It was like 1960s CIA type work, and it was all about like trying to avert World War III because there was a shipment going to Dresden that was then going to like trigger a coup in Berlin that would then invade the West Germany. So it was a very interesting scenario, and I think it was executed well. That said, Jason a couple times ran out into enemy fire, and the last time, like, he kept doing it over and over, and like you'd mentioned,
you know, say oncoming traffic for a second. I'm like, wait a minute.
No, like they triggered an alarm. There was a bunch of enemies that started swarming, and I'm like, all right, there's going to be consequences here, so I'm not going to hold back. If someone dies, they die. Jason ended up getting torn to shreds by machine gun fire because he ran out into, he ran out of cover. And I know that didn't feel good for him and all that, but, basically the point I'm trying to make here is that, not every system is for every person, but I do think that any person who likes any level of imaginative stuff can find something they like within tabletop games. They may just not know the game that they're looking for. Sometimes it requires a little bit more, a little bit more effort to find that thing.
All right, I want to complain about something for a second.
Go for it.
Okay. This is a woe. Players. This is a PSA. Players. I love you guys to death. You guys can get really, really, really creative with your characters. Stop, for the love of all that is holy, for the love of the gods, stop making the emo backstory. You know how many times I sit down at a table and I'm ready to DM, and like one or two of the players is like, well, it all started when my parents died. And I'm like, my gosh. Bro, and it's always, it's just, why does every player, every time players consistently give me the edgiest character ever? Like, I get it. You straighten your hair, you wear a guy liner, you have stud bracelets and belts. I get it. Black Veil Brides is great and everything. Don't sit at my table if you're gonna come up with an emo backstory, right? And then also have no character progression. You can't always be the darkness and shadows type at the table. Like, sometimes Granny doesn't want to be saved by the person who's 5 seconds away from just jumping into the void.
I'm sorry. You're 100% right. I don't care.
I'm
sending you a picture.
Stare at the beholder, go stare at it. That's cool with me. Roll up another character and get out. Stop it, please.
Go give him a little kiss. He looks like a friendly fellow.
Honestly, dude.
No, honestly, I don't know. I think we talked about this before. I don't know if you've seen the Disastrous Life of Psyche K.
No.
There's this one character who is like the stereotypical Chuny. His name's Kaido. I'm sending you an image of him. This is just like, in a nutshell, every one of those characters. I will put it up on the screen. If you guys have not, first of all, if you like fast-paced anime, Psyche's really funny. It's a good comedy. But they do a lot of these like parodies. It's like a parody within a parody, if you will, or they've got every single stereotype. And this is definitely one of them. He is the Chuny teenager who is way over the top, just darkness and the powers speak to me and everything. It's like, that is who these characters are. Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what, on the flip side of that one, players who don't know how their characters work. They'll build a character and then have no idea how to play it.
No, I agree. I got nothing to add to that. Okay. Really, I get it. No, because so here's my thing, right? Yeah. If you're new to the system, that's one thing, right?
100%, 100%.
If you're the kind of person, right? So okay, I guess this is kind of like an asterisk to your pet peeve, right? Because this is something I also notice. Sometimes there will be a player that only plays the one class. That's the only thing they know. It's the only thing they've sat at the table with, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll roll up and this is always fighters. I'm sorry. It's always fighters. I hate fighter players. I'm sorry. If you're a fighter player, just stop. Just stop. Play a barbarian. Play a paladin. Play literally anything else. I get it. It's versatile. It's a cool toolbox. Cool. Stop it. Get some help. So with fighter players, right? Like what ends up happening is they'll roll fighter like for like 6-7 characters, right?
Yeah.
Then they'll finally branch out and they'll play like a druid or a sorcerer or whatever, right? And then what ends up happening is they won't enjoy the class, right? But also they're playing it wrong, and they'll sit there like, I don't get it. This class is stupid.
The people who use like ranger just for the martial stuff.
Yeah, or like they'll play sorcerer, and then they'll play it as if the sorcerer is a monk. It's like, if you wanted to play monk, play the monk.
Oh,
what are you doing?
People who play warlock and then just use Eldritch Blast and martial stuff, and it's like,
yeah, like they'll go hexbladed, but the only thing they do is like Eldritch Blast, and then it's like stab. It's like, bro,
they're like, I'm a swordsman who also can cast Eldritch Blast.
It's like, congratulations, you could have just taken the magic initiate feat and called it a day.
Yeah. 100% with you. Like I definitely agree with that. To that extent, though, I think another thing to talk about is, and it kind of goes hand in hand, or rather, I guess the flip side of players who don't know how their character works is players who know how their character works really well and turn into glory hogs. And this is a specific type of person that not only will like understand how the game works, right? But they will exploit it to the point where they are dealing ungodly amounts of damage and one-shotting everything, and no one else gets to play.
Just for clarification's sake, are you saying on purpose or on accident?
Purposefully. If you accidentally do it, I understand.
Cool, cool. I'm in the clear. We're good.
I'm talking about people who know that they break their characters and they're gonna just, you know, screw everybody else. Don't care about anyone else sitting around the table. I'm gonna walk up there and I'm gonna kill it right now.
For a second there, I felt personally attacked.
No, I'm not talking about you.
And I promise. I didn't know she could do that. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that's not on you. That was an accident. It was really funny. And when stuff like that happens, okay, so let's take a scenario, right? When something like that occurs and you accidentally make an overpowered character, I'm not going to expect you to nerf your own character. That is not on you. Like, if you accidentally made something without, and I have to specify, it has to be accidental. If you made a character by accident that is too powerful, instead of nerfing your character, I may change a small component of your character to help nerf it and or throw tougher enemies at you. Because if you're able to kill it, why shouldn't you be fighting it?
Me and my accidental 4 turns.
Yeah. See, stuff like that.
My back-to-back extra turns and extra actions.
And the thing is, what's complicated about that as a DM is, you know, sometimes, especially when you know you've got a broken party, and you're like, okay, my party's level 12. I just watched them kill a level 17 something. What can I throw at them? And then you look at these enemies, and it's like, okay, level 20, level 21, and you're just kind of scratching your head like, oh man, but this seems like a lot. I don't know if they're gonna kill it. And you're like, I guess I'll throw it in as a backup enemy, and you end up using it as a backup enemy, and they one-shot it.
Yeah,
that feels
not even
bad. That's not a pet peeve, because I'll be honest, that is 100% on the DM. If the DM did not do the research to find out if this is not something, or to figure out if this is something that their players can one-shot, that's on them. Like, they didn't do the work. If you're DM, your job is to build the campaign. And the only other thing you could do is ask your players for recommendations, but then there goes the element of surprise. There goes any level of like build up or mystique about the game. They already know what they're going to be fighting.
You know, I think this is a more of a like a DMing woe rather than a pet peeve, but I think this might be something that's also kind of a little bit of our fault, not just the enemies aspect of it, but okay. This is something that pops up, especially with like homebrew. Like, I'm not the homebrew type, like, you know this.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm not the homebrew type is specifically so another Shardmodius doesn't happen. Like, another Sword Mage doesn't happen.
That wasn't even homebrew. That was legit. Like, see, these are the things
but
that
the spells I would use. Some of them were.
Can we talk about Power Word Pain for a second before you go into that, because that was ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I'll let you explain it. Please explain it to our lovely audience.
So let me pull up the spell actually, because there was a specific wording in there that was very. I wasn't expecting this one. Okay, Power Word. Okay, so with Power Word Pain, there's an issue. Okay, I think this is the official one, is Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay, so you speak a word of power that causes waves of intense pain to assail one creature you can see within range. If the target has 100 hit points or fewer, it is subject to crippling pain. Otherwise, the spell has no effect on it. A target is also unaffected if it is immune to being charmed.
Right.
Okay,
that is the original spell, right?
Yes. Now, the issue is, it specifically just says, while the target is affected by crippling pain, any speed it can be has to be okay. Let me see if I can find the specific. Has disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, saving throws, other than Constitution saving throws. If the target tries to cast a spell, it must first succeed. Okay, this is a little bit different, but either way,
that is the core spell. That it basically just casts a bunch of disadvantage on the creature that you're targeting, and it makes sense because it's what, a 4th level spell.
Yeah, 4th level enchantment. Okay, I found the one.
So okay, now that you've heard that, listen to what we were actually using, because we didn't know the original one existed. This just happens to be what Alex found. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, so this one is this is the one for Power Word Pain. This is found in Deep Magic Volume 1. That's the source that I guess the system was pulling from. When you utter this word of power, one creature within 60 feet of you takes 4d10 force damage. At the start of each of its turns, the creature must make a successful Constitution saving throw or take an extra 4d10 force damage. The spell ends on the successful save.
You wanna talk about how many enemies were targeted by this spell, Alex?
A lot. No, a lot. Because here's the thing, right? And in terms of like, because you and I tend to be generous DMs, so we kind of sometimes will ignore the material component of a spell.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that this spell has no saving throw to begin with. It's only afterwards.
Yep.
So it's so easily busted because you just cast it and it just happens. You cast it, 4d10 damage, and it just constantly just 4d10 damage until it dies.
Let's just talk about this for a second, right? What is the average hit points of a level? What is it? I guess a creature rating 1/2 human.
I don't know. Actually, isn't it like?
Okay, let me rephrase the question. What is the average health of a level 1 player?
I don't know, like 8.
Yeah. So theoretically, you can one-shot any level 1 creature instantly just by casting that spell. No saving throw. It just dies.
Yeah.
Like that is ridiculous.
Oh,
now, you
still
have to roll for it unless you take the average. But then if you choose to take the average, it just dies.
What makes it worse, right? And you kept trying to convince me to take the average, by the way. All right, don't let him fool you. He tried to convince me to take the average. I rolled for it every time. I'm a good boy.
I was very upset about this spell. I want to make that very clear.
But what makes it worse, right, is the way that I built the character, and I didn't realize that the effects stacked. So what would end up happening is I had multiple different spells that I could cast, or multiple different things that would stack on top of each other that would essentially give me extra actions per turn. So I could just cast this just constantly, right? Because what would end up happening is it would let me pick a spell. I think that was like 4th level or lower or something like that as an action that I could use as a cantrip.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was absolutely broken.
No. I could pick a spell. That's what it was. I could pick a spell. What was it? I could pick a non-ritual spell that had a action as its timer and cast it as a ritual spell. And because I was playing a cleric, I could just cast ritual spells for free, essentially.
Yep.
It was kind of, I think that's what it was. It was kind of ridiculous.
Now, in fairness,
I would just cast stuff.
In fairness, I did 100% give you some extra stuff as part of your ascension, but here I am as a DM, right? Like I have a dilemma. I have a party of players that is rapidly advancing and having to fight tougher and tougher enemies, but I also have a story to attend to. I have to face the fact that theoretically Shard was actually the deity Asmodeus. So that being the case, I had to rank him up in ways that gave him extra stuff beyond whatever his, base level up was, which we did milestone XP. That's a whole nother story. We'll get into the milestone versus, skill XP in the future. But as we're going, like, I would eventually give him, I think I gave you, no, you already had it, didn't you? You had dark vision. Or no, was that something I gave you? I can't even remember now.
I don't remember.
Well, whatever the case was.
Oh, no. I glowed.
Right, but then eventually you stopped glowing, so I think we had to give you dark vision.
It was, I think it was like Infernal Sight or something like that.
You eventually got True Sight. I remember that. That was like your final. He got True Sight, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, he's a deity, so it makes sense.
I can fight skinwalkers now.
And literally, the campaign ended with him ascending the throne. It made the most sense. I'm not gonna let him play as a literal deity to do anything but utter a few words. And even with that, like, that's some unchecked power right there.
Hey, I checked my power, thank you.
Yeah.
I think I did a good job rebalancing what you broke that I broke by accident.
Okay, technically, Jonathan broke it. He blew the horn. Anyway,
that is true. That is true. That is valid. Facts. Jonathan, it's your fault. I know you're watching. This is all on you. I did nothing wrong. Even when you were a sword, I still saved you. You're welcome.
This is true. This is true. Jonathan, you were a sword. I saved you because you could have been just dead. And you came back as a sword, and then you got to reascend and reunite with your body, which is not something most players get to do. Anyway, moving on from that, I had two last pet peeves.
Hey, I could have wished for a pony, all right?
Yeah. I have two last pet peeves to cover, and then we'll move on to the worst moments as a DM. So the first one, like, I'll be honest, it happens. Like, you're never gonna not encounter this, but it's so frustrating. Is no shows after confirming. Like, when you say, okay, we're gonna meet on, Tuesday the 15th, and like everybody's like, cool, we're gonna meet on Tuesday at on the 15th at 6 p.m. They all agree in the group chat, we're good. Come Tuesday at 6 p.m., we've got a no-show. Someone who did not show up, they didn't text you, they didn't call you. You're calling them, they're not responding, and you're like, do I wait for this person? And then you end up waiting a half hour or an hour because, and this is actually worse, is when they say, I'm on my way. And then you have to sit there and wait for an hour or an hour and a half for the person to eventually show up because they don't tell you I'm X number of time out, or they'll tell you and they were wrong. That really grinds my gears.
What makes it even worse, right, is like sometimes there'll be times where like they have every intention of actually meeting up on time. Then suddenly they got a date, or suddenly this thing happened, or suddenly that thing happened, and then they'll go and follow through with that thing, then completely forget about the campaign like entirely.
Now,
and then you won't find out until like the next day.
I mean, I will agree with that, with the exception of life happens. I'm never gonna fault you. Let's say, God forbid, something happens to a family member, like they got into a car accident or something like that. If you say, my dad was just in an accident, I can't make it tonight, I'm not going to fault you for that. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Stuff happens. Let's say maybe you have to watch if you've got kids, have to watch the kids or something like that night. Or something unforeseen happens. I get it. But if your excuse is, I have to do homework, or if your excuse is, well, I need to do my laundry or something like that, like, no, not valid, because you could have made plans for that. You could have planned ahead and figured it out. Like, that is I look at that as just like, your lack of prior planning does not mean the entire group should suffer for it. So in those instances,
or at least,
yeah, go ahead. No, you.
I was gonna say, at the very least, if that's gonna happen, just like, let a brother know.
Exactly.
like if you know that you've got to do this mystery homework that just suddenly popped up that totally wasn't there last week, just tell me. Just let me know. Be like, hey, I know I said that I was going to be there, and I'm sorry about this. Like the day of, not the day of, but like the day before, right? Or even if it's just a few hours before. Yeah. Just let me know. So that way the rest of my players aren't sitting around twiddling their thumbs, sitting there eating the Chick-fil-A that was supposed to last us half of the session, right?
Exactly.
And you're just not there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and that's even worse, honestly, when everyone agrees that we're gonna like all chip in money towards a specific food item, and then someone goes and buys the food item, and then that person never shows up.
Yep.
Especially, like, it's not as bad when it's like a shared Chick-fil-A platter or a pizza or something like that, where it's like, okay, well, I have leftovers. But if it's like, I got you something from Chipotle, and it's sitting there getting cold, like,
it's like a specific order too. Like it's an order that I wouldn't eat.
It is a hand-picked order for whoever ordered it, and then they don't show up. It's like,
And it's something that it's almost always something that I would never eat, or someone else at the table probably would not eat. Like I guarantee you, there's a party out there that does a Chipotle group buy thing, right? And everyone pitches in, and I guarantee you, not a single person on that at that entire table, except for the one guy that we're probably talking about here, right? Like none of them like beans or like green peppers or something like that, right? And the one dude probably absolutely loves peppers, so we got extra peppers on that thing to the point where all of the rice and the beans and everything, even the tortilla, tastes like pepper at that point, right? There's pepper juices on everything.
They want the extra sour cream, and it's sitting there just like curdling. Like you know exactly what I'm talking about, where it's like they put some sauce on it or something, when it's like, oh, they love that sauce, but no one else wants to touch it.
The Moe's sauce gets really, really, really nasty after sitting for an hour and a half.
Anything from Tijuana Flats that is covered in cheese.
Okay, hold on. I can't agree with you on that one. You take that back.
It's been sitting there for 2 hours.
I'll eat it after 3 days. What you mean?
Okay. You know what? To each their own.
Bro, their queso on the flautas.
It is good. It is good. I think the verde sauce is pretty good too.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
So that, and then the last one I have on here, and I think everyone can agree with this, unless you are one, in which case, shame on you. Rules lawyers. To the point where you are so dead set on whatever rule that you are going, like, let's say it is, especially the rules that I see the most trouble with are when someone will argue with the DM over a rule. Like not even like another player. If players are hashing it out, let's say they're doing a duel or something like that, where it would come into play, I can understand if you want a fair set of rules. It's player versus player, it's only fair. If you're fighting an enemy and the enemy is able to do something and you disagree with how the enemy performed that action, unless it is completely out of left field, you do not have grounds to argue with the DM.
Can I say something here? Because I have such an opinion on this.
Go for it. 100%.
Okay. All right. Hot take here. Hear me out. What is the first rule of D&D?
First rule is DM is basically God.
Yeah. Everything is up to the DM's discretion. If the player's handbook, right? If the player's handbook says that like insert piece of armor is worth like, let's say 50 gold. And I say it's worth 5 silver. It's worth 5 silver.
Yep.
Right. And I'm not saying that to pick at these players. It's just, you have to understand that when it comes to being a DM, there are things that are beyond your mortal comprehension. Sometimes there are things happening in the background, world building wise, right, that would make that specific type of armor worth that much. For example, let's say if there's a type of plate armor that you got, right, and it is like, standard plate mail or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. and you try to sell this and you're at this, this specific shop, but you don't know, you just walked into that town, you went to the shop because you wanted to, trade and sell, buy stuff like that. And you try to sell some spare plate armor that you got like 1 or 2 dungeons ago, right?
Right.
What you might not know is that shopkeeper knows who owns that plate armor and hates that guy, right? And just wants nothing to do with the armor, right? Or maybe that town specifically hates paladins and they recognize that this plate mail came from like a paladin at some point, or they just hate plate mail for some reason. Or maybe they're swimming in the metals and the alloys that they use in order to make that kind of plate mail, so it's worthless to them. It's not rare to them. It's high supply, low demand, right?
Right.
Sometimes that happens in world building, but because you didn't ask, or because you didn't think to make like a history check or some sort of knowledge check at some point, you wouldn't know that. So you're going to sit here and then argue for 15-20 minutes with the DM about why your plate mail is so special that it should completely circumvent all world building, right?
Yeah.
Because you want some extra gold that I was going to give you anyway, because it's gold, it's money. It's meaningless to me as a DM because I could just take all that money from you in an instant. I want you to have fun. But now all the other players have to sit here and listen to you whine and complain like an absolute man-child, right? Because you didn't get what you wanted.
I am the DM. I control the inflation rates.
Exactly. Like the poor rogue over here, right, has been stealth checking successfully and trying to lockpick each and every single door, hoping there's a magical item. And because, no one forgot to ask, and he's probably shy anyway, he forgot to ask me, hey, are there magical items in this campaign? I never told him no, right? But like, he's over here waiting on a magical item, maybe succeeding every possible check. Meanwhile, you're complaining about 20 gold. Come on.
This seems like a really specific example.
Listen, I was that rogue before, all right? I was both that rogue before and that DM before. Fight me. I'm sorry. And it's always the fighters. It's always the fighters. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, man. You're not wrong, though. Just a reminder to all of our D&D players, not specifically in my campaign, but at any campaign you're in, the whole point of the game is to have fun. And sometimes that means that a specific thing you want to do may not be possible. Why? Because D&D is about challenges. It's about overcoming something. It's about rising to the occasion and defeating whatever it is you're supposed to defeat. Whether that is saving a town, or slaying a monster, or setting the kingdoms right, or something to that extent. Your role within it is just a piece of the pie. And everybody is there to have a good time. If you're so focused on the rules, or, one-upping everybody, or being the main character, which, by the way, you're not the main character. I just want to let you know that you are not the main character. Everyone there is having a good time together, or at least that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
so,
Justin.
So just remember, like, the DM is a player too. Treat them like another player, because they are.
Wait, did you just say the thing?
What did I say?
Do I get to have an opinion as the DM? Do I get to have fun too?
Shocking, right? Like, you're not just the slave who makes the entire campaign and all the hard work and does all that stuff. You actually get to enjoy it.
Honestly, as a DM, half the time I feel like the thankless parent.
And I mean, I don't want to sound too preachy on this, but players appreciate your DM appreciate your players, because in times of hardship, it may not always be easy to get together. And as anybody who's ever had to forfeit or end a campaign prematurely, they know this.
There's so many times where I've actually seen players do something awesome or do something really incredible, like kind of like you and I do the same thing with initiative, or no, I'm saying not initiative, with inspirations, where it's like anytime that you roleplay your character well, or like you stick to something that your character would logically do, despite the fact that the opposite would benefit you more, right? Whenever there's things like that happen, or like whether maybe they're creative in combat, where they're like combining spells in a specific way to reach an outcome that like I as a DM didn't think of, it's fun. I would be so happy to just shower my players in inspiration die after inspiration die for doing just really clever stuff or really good role playing, really good like being creative in combat. And I like it when that happens. It makes me, that's what I as a DM, that's what I like to see. I want my players to have fun. I want my players to be invested. I want to see my players thinking outside the box, right? Spellcasters, I'm talking about y'all because you guys will just use the same spells a crutch over and over and over again every combat. You know who you are. Wizards.
Ooh,
I know
calling you out.
You know who you are, right? But like, I like to see the creativity.
Absolutely.
Right? One of my all-time favorite classes is specifically because of that, which is the Arcane Trickster subclass for rogues. Love it. Yeah. They get so crafty and do so many. I'm biased. I'm me. That's me. I'm the Arcane Trickster rogue. I'm sorry.
I know you are.
Clerics, that's my thing. Listen, okay? Listen. It's fun, all right? It's fun. I mage hand with one hand and I stab you with another, but you think I'm stabbing you from the front, but I'm behind you because illusions, okay? Whatever.
No, you're not wrong. Honestly, that's one of the things, like, truth be told, you know, D&D is really about, I think, enjoying the world building more than anything. You know, you can absolutely stick to the rules. If everybody's having a good time and they're, you know, like everybody agrees on a rule set, and I think that is important to say is, you know, either everyone agrees on it or the DM says so. Because at the end of the day, if you're really not enjoying a game, you should just leave. You know, there's no reason to stick around. So, you know, if everyone else is having a good time and you're just not, really no reason to stay. It's for fun anyway. But I think that's a good segue into worst moments as DM. Specifically, I'm gonna go ahead and just cap mine off really quick because I'm sure you have a more impressive story than I do. This is a while back. I don't think you were playing with us yet. No, as a matter of fact, I know you weren't playing with us yet. This was an instance where I was playing with certain players, and at some point, I remember being the DM and basically someone did something that they thought they could do. And I basically looked at the rules and then I looked up at them and said, no, you're not able to do that. And they got so bent out of shape that, I mean, we spent a solid like 30, 45 minutes just trying to figure out what the rules were, like in a specific set. Cause I looked at them and basically said, no, you've been getting away with all this other stuff. You're not allowed to do this because, first of all, you're circumnavigating all of the things that I built as a DM. Second of all, your character isn't able to do that anyway. So why should I allow it? And
I think I know what you're talking about. I think you told me this story before.
Possibly. And they just got really bent out of shape, and the rest of the night was just super miserable. I remember coming out of there feeling like, why do I even bother doing this? You know, this is such a horrible time. I can tell everybody else is, you know, really upset and frustrated by this. Why would I bother? You know, as a DM, why should I allow this to continue? And the next session, it was a bit better. We didn't get into that anymore, but it was just really, really painful. For those who have not heard of this channel before, if you're looking for really interesting cringe or other, D&D stories that just can make your skin crawl, I recommend the channel Crit Crab. This is not sponsored by them. I'm not partnered with them. He's a cool guy from what I can tell. I've watched some of his content and there's some real gems in there.
Dude, many an hour have been lost just vegging out the Crit Crab. I will
100% put a tag in the video here.
Days. Please do. Like, there's so many boring days that I've had at, you know, certain jobs and stuff like that, where I've just been like, man, I want to play D&D, but all my friends are busy, and I'm also technically supposed to be working, but there's nothing to do. Crit Crab and Puffin Forest, the OGs. I love you guys. You guys are fantastic.
100%. These guys are great. And hey, if either of you guys want to come on the channel sometime and chat about this stuff or play a game, like, hit me up. You know, you've got my comment section. Drop a comment down below or email me, and I am 1,000% ready. You tell me when and where. But
no, that crab is the king of Reddit cringe. It's so funny.
100%. Yeah, because when you were talking about the creepy DMs, or not the creepy DMs, but the creepy players, that is
The creepy
immediately
players, yes.
that is immediately where my
Yeah.
mind went, was just straight to Crit Crab. So I had to drop that. Sorry to divert, but please tell me what you've got as far as
All right.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, all right. Okay, so this one is, I will admit openly, like right from the get-go, this is entirely my fault. And by that I mean it had nothing to do with me. It's entirely my player's fault. Anyway, so okay, so we were yeah, so we were playing I think it was Tomb of Annihilation, right? And I love this guy. He's fantastic. He was on some BS that day. All right, so essentially, I tried to make a little bit more of like a creative version of, you know, the whole Cholt area thing. I don't know if you're familiar at all with Tomb of Annihilation, but I always mess up and butcher the name. I think it's like a Sararak or something like that. Yeah, the Lich. He's essentially the big bad evil guy. And don't worry about it. The Aztecs, dinosaurs, middle of a jungle place. Really good.
I mean, truthfully, half of the like pronunciations and stuff is really like up for interpretation anyway, because they rarely ever provide the actual, you know, pronunciation.
Yeah. So there was this other Lich that I kind of like injected as like a sub bad guy, right? And two of my players, both of them were Kenku. By the way, a really, really fantastic race, by the way. They're awesome. One of my players was a Kenku bard. I loved it. It was great. He's such a good character. Anyway, the other Kenku, who I believe was a rogue at the time, right? I had this whole subplot going on with essentially in some of the towns, there was essentially like a tribe of Kenku that were more like a mafia than anything else.
Oh, jeez.
And there was, yeah, and they were called the Kenku Squad. I'm sorry, the Squawk Squad. It was the Squawk Squad.
Okay.
The Squawk Squad. But yeah, so like what ended up happening, right, is there was essentially the mob boss had a daughter, and it was a white Kenku. And
I already see where this is going.
Yeah, this Kenku was essentially like their princess, the princess of the Squawk Squad Mafia, right? And what ended up happening is one night, this player attempted to do the bard thing for said Kenku princess.
Oh,
right?
Said.
And no, but what ends up happening, right? Because actually, it's not going where you think it's going. I promise you. So
Okay.
what ends up happening is the Kenku princess essentially gets kidnapped by this Lich sublord character, right? And the whole reason as to why this Lich kidnapped her is because of how rare it is to find a white Kenku.
Makes sense.
Right? And the thing is, this Lich is an artist. So his entire thing, right, is that he just wants to paint things, right? But because it's a Lich and because it's a Kenku, the Kenku thought, because, you know, obviously she was kidnapped, right, that she was going to die. So she thought she was in trouble, and she was in a birdcage, which, looking back on it, was kind of racist, and I probably shouldn't have done that. Anyway, so what ends up happening, right?
Sorry for all the Kenku viewers out there.
Yeah, my bad. But so what ends up happening, right, is my player here, who's playing this Kenku rogue, right, ends up like not being able to. He wants to essentially speak almost like telepathically or whatever to this to this princess, and instead of sending stones, right, which would require her to also have one, I thought it'd be kind of cool to add like an Aztec mask artifact of some sorts in this general area, like a magical item, right?
Okay.
And my stupid self gave him what was essentially a talking mask that was capable of communicating telepathically. And I thought, okay, you know what? It's fine. Let's let him use it to communicate with the princess. Be like, hey, you know, coming after you. Don't worry, I'm going to save you, blah, 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 right?
Right.
I forgot that in the description of this thing, because we were playing on Roll20. I had a plan for this, and I don't know if you've used Roll20 before or not, but in Roll20 there's a GM notes section, and then there's the notes section, and I put my GM notes in the notes section by accident.
Whoops.
And one of the things that this thing was capable of, because essentially I went with the Majora's Mask route with it, and so I took a deity and I shoved it in a mask, and the mask was supposed to be an ancient evil that was sealed by the Children's a long time ago, right?
Okay.
Anyway, so he was capable of teleporting objects.
Uh-oh.
And, well, of teleporting things, just in general, opening portals, right? But it was based off a certain stat, but the teleporting option was whoever was wearing it could just teleport for free, right? And this guy, after I warned him several times not to use it, it was an accident, I'm gonna let it go just because you already saw it, it's already spoiled, whatever, but just don't do it. Don't push that button. He pushes the button and he teleports directly to the Lich to go and fight him. And he while the Lich is painting, right, teleports to me and he says, "Hey, Lich, what am I supposed to do with that as a DM?"
Yeah.
Tell me, brother, tell me, what am I supposed to do with that?
I think there's only one route.
There's only one route. That Lich turned around, pointed at him, and just power word kill. One dead Kenku on the ground. What am I supposed to do with that?
You literally said, bro, I was painting. Don't interrupt me.
Like, he teleported to a Lich at like 5th level.
Maybe not your brightest character.
What? Why did he do that though? Why? Why would you teleport to a Lich? Especially after I told you. The Lich can literally just speak your death into existence and you die. There's no going back. There's no spare the dying. There's nothing that can happen there. You're just dead. And he's like, "Nah, I can take him." What?
Yeah. Again,
so
this goes to like characters who don't know how the character works, or players who don't know how the character works.
I love him. He's one of my best friends. I will never ever let him live this down.
I knew that is exactly where you were going with that.
He teleports to the Lich and he's like, "Hey, kill me."
Oh man, that is hilarious. I can't imagine. You know, like that's one of those enemies that I think is so legendary that honestly, if you don't know what a Lich is, and you know what you're in the fantasy world and you don't know what a Lich is, that's on you. And to then like teleport to one and say like, "I'm gonna fight this thing," that is dumb times 2. It's dumb squared.
What makes it worse, right? What makes it worse is that he's a Lich who's just painting. He's just minding his own business. Like, I get you want to save her, but like, what? Couldn't you just talk it out? Could you at least try, or at least go with the party so you don't just die? Like, there's a million different ways that you can be reckless like that.
Bro could have offered him a cup of coffee or something like.
No, like, okay, this is the thing I loved about Tom, right? Is that he was doing the Elemental Evil campaign. This is the one that I was playing in, and we essentially had like this splintering of like two factions essentially that we had for our party, right? Where our party kind of split into 2 different ways of going about things, like methodology wise, right? And there's a Lich in it, and this Lich was using essentially like an Earth cult to do his bidding and stuff like that. He wasn't necessarily leading them. It's like they had. So his lair was underneath their underground monastery area, which was underneath like a series of villages, right?
Gotcha.
And so they were essentially acting as like a buffer between him and the outside world. And what would happen is any corpses that they would come across or any slaves or whatever that they took, they would just bring it to him, right? Okay. Essentially, in order to not for him to not just straight up kill them, right? And this Lich, is like, "Hey, I just want some bodies to experiment on. I'm just trying to do my research." Like, it's a Lich, so obviously that's an objectively evil thing to do, but like, they're lawful, right? As long as you're not getting in their way, right? They're not just going to outright kill you for no reason unless, you know, they have a reason to kill you, right? So like, the whole thing, or the idea, the setup that Tom gave us, I guess, at least to my remembrance, right, is that we weren't supposed to fight the Lich. I just wanted to have a conversation with it as a player, right? It was me, and I took the urchin background, so I had this little mouse named Scuttle, a little white mouse, and you know me, you know how I get with companion characters, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
So what ends up happening, right?
Is that a dog?
It was not. So what ends up happening, right, is like me and this Lich were having a conversation, right? And the other party comes in and just tries to kill him. While me and this Lich are mid-conversation, the other party just comes in, tries to kill him.
Yeah.
And because this Lich knows that I'm with them, he's no longer interested in having a conversation because my quote-unquote friends just straight up tried to kill him. We could have had a Lich on our side. Because he's like, straight up, he's like, oh yeah, no, I don't really care who supplies the bodies. I don't even care who the bodies are. I just need flesh to do my experiments. I'm not even doing anything nefarious. I just want to, better gauge how like death magic works in general, right? So like, they could be cultist bodies. I'm cool with that. A body's a body to me, dude, right? So I'm like, all right, bet. Let's kill the cultists. You got fresh bodies. There's cultists all over the place. Right, I will go all over Faerun just fetching you bad dudes, right? So to have your weird magic sessions, right? Hey, I ain't gonna king shame you, right? But like, you do you, but just do it with the bad guys, right? And the trade-off is you're no longer gonna have noisy neighbors upstairs, and the nearby villages won't mess with you. And he's like, all right, bet. But no, we could have had a Lich on our side, but no, let's just do it for the 300 gold and the XP. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to like the sense of roleplay kind of goes out the window in those things. I do like the concept of playing as your character as opposed to playing as yourself, playing the character being a greater component of it. Sometimes it goes a little too far. There was one campaign I played where I was playing with I think George was DM and Jason was playing with me, and I can't remember the details. I think I was his son. We were both rangers or something like that. And he decided to go kill a bunch of orcs because his character hated orcs. My character gets one shot. Level 1. He got like 35 damage or something, and George is like, no, you don't have any healing magic, no spells, you're dead. Make a new character. And I'm just like, man, I wanted to play a ranger. Come on, man, I've never done this before. So
what you could do is, right, like, so you're like, so let's say you're Jason's kid, right? And so there's Jason, then there's Jason Jr. You should have wrote Jason Jr.
Yeah, so see, that was kind of where we were going with this, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I decided, I was like, no, because he's going to end up getting me killed again. Like, his hatred for orcs supersedes... Father ever. I'm like, he's going to end up getting me killed again, because his hatred for orcs supersedes his love for me as his child. So I was like, nah, I think I'll just make another character. And I did. I guess they briefly brought me back to life. Oh, that's right. That was the that was the campaign. Oh gosh, I forget his name. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Do you know what a Snurfneblin is?
What did you just call me?
Do you know what a Snurfneblin is?
No, I do not.
It is
believe I do.
It is a specific type of deep gnome.
Okay.
Anyway, I played that. Was I chaotic evil? No, I think I was chaotic neutral. I was a chaotic neutral, and he was a grave warden. That was a really interesting campaign, and I forget for the life of me his name. I'll have to text George at some point and be like, can you give me a refresher on that? That character was simultaneously loved and hated because it was an absolute troll of a character that replaced this other, like I was going to be a ranger. I was going to be really cool. And then I was like, no, you killed me. Now you get the meme character. So he ends up going around. His whole like personality was based on loving magic, anything magic. He didn't care what it was. He didn't care about money. It was just magic. If he had magic items, great. If he could have literally just scrolls with magic words written on them, but they didn't do anything, he would take that over money. And I really enjoyed playing that character, to the point that I think they ended up, I can't remember if they killed him. He became a deity at some point, I think.
What race was this?
It's a Snirfneblin, I think. Hold on, let me look it up.
Can we say that on YouTube or on Spotify? Is that demonetizable? That's not demonetizable, right?
So it's a deep gnome. It's Svirfneblin. Svirfneblin.
Bless you.
Thank you. But yeah, that was an interesting character. But hey there, Future Jay here. We had a lot of fun making this video, so much so that we nearly doubled the estimated recording time, and we'll be splitting this video into 2 parts, with part 2 coming out on the 27th. We have a crazy video planned for next Friday that you're gonna love, so make sure you tune in for our Tavern Talk D&D Christmas special. To all those that have made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like the video and drop a comment on what you'd like to hear us talk about in the new year. We're looking forward to bringing you some awesome content. So, once again, thanks for watching, and as always, stay awesome.